Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently we are in Jeremiah chapter 34, and again, in the midst of some very horrible circumstances, God is making some very profound promises through prophecy about the restoration of Israel. So let's get right in it. Jeremiah chapter 34. It says, "This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his armies, all of his earthly kingdoms under his control, and all of his nations were fighting against Jerusalem and all its surrounding cities." So quite the resume. One of the things about this, notice here, he says, and it's interesting, in the book of Daniel, the other revelation that we see, because we shift prophecies here, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, even Isaiah, of course, one of the focuses is on Israel, and then you will see surrounding the surrounding nations. When we get to the book of Daniel, we see a shift in thought as the world kingdoms and in God's plans and purposes in the world kingdom scenario. But we see that God is the one who is ruling the world kingdom, every nation. Okay. So it says here, Babylon, right? This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, all his armies, all his earthly kingdoms under his control. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, this invasion that we're under, when we come to this invasion here, there is a shift in world, what's the word I'm looking for? There is a shift in how the world works. So up until this time, you see um, um, you had superpowers like the Assyrians, like Egypt, but they did not rule the world. Okay, they did as they please, but they did not rule the world. What we see here is a shift that we go from small kingdoms, even mighty kingdoms, to now these world dominating, these world ruling kingdoms. And Babylon is the first. So the affairs of the world change here. Okay, and that's why you see the statement, all of the earthly kingdoms under his control. So in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar is given a dream about these human governments. The image was a human form, and then all of the human government. So the head of gold, which Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, the chest of, what was the chest of? Not silver, bronze. And then I think the legs of silver and iron, and then the feet of iron and clay. Okay. So these are, but in each case, they represent kingdoms. So you're going to go from the Babylonian kingdom to the kingdom of the Mede and Persians, then the Grecian kingdoms, and then the Roman Empire, and then at the end, the unnamed world dominating kingdoms. We see that kingdom in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, the 10 nations with their toes, okay? Now, um, um, but again, in each case, they rule the world, okay? They rule the world. Verse 2, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, "Go, speak to Zedekiah, king of Judah, and tell him, this is what the Lord says. I'm about to hand this city over to the king of Babylon, and he will burn it down. As for you, you will not escape from his hands, but are certainly to be captured and handed over to him. You will meet the king of Babylon eye to eye and speak face to face. You will go to Babylon. Now, Zedekiah is a very wicked person. In fact, the last three kings of Israel, in fact, Zedekiah is the last king of Israel. In other words, since this time, there has not been a king in Israel. He's the last one, and he's one of the wicked. So, and he doesn't humble himself before God either. Verse 4. Yet hear the Lord's words, Zedekiah, king of Judah. This is what the Lord says concerning you. You will not die by the sword. You will die peacefully. There will be a burning ceremony for you, just like the burning ceremonies of your fathers, the former kings who preceded you. Our king is dead, will be the lament for you, for I have spoken this word. This is the Lord's declaration. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing, because he's going to be in prison. Verse 6, in prison in Babylon. So Jeremiah the prophet related all these words to Zedekiah the king of Judah in Jerusalem, while the king of Babylon's army was attacking Jerusalem and all the Judah's remaining cities against Lachish and Azekah, for they were the only ones left of Judah's fortified city. So, again, while this would happen, while he was speaking this, he won't even humble himself. We'll see that later. Verse 8, this is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord after King Zedekiah made a covenant with all the people who were in Jerusalem to proclaim freedom to them, though each man would free his male and female Hebrew slaves, and no one would enslave his Judean brother. Now, this is kind of a touchy subject because notice he talks about slavery. Now, in the law of Moses, and some of you all are going to have a hard time with this because the question always comes, why did God allow slavery? The answer is, don't know. Can't answer that. The law of Moses condoned slavery, the owning of human beings as property, which means you would have to have taken the human rights away from these people. They never had them if you were a slave. Even and some of the arguments today that people try to justify American slavery is that, well, all the world had slavery. That's, like Israel's worse. But America, since you want to put America on the same level, the difference is what both countries proclaim. Remember, none of the other nations proclaimed freedom. None of the other nations said all men were created equal. Okay, so none of the other nations do that. This is what makes America the worst evil hypocrites. Okay, well, we come to Israel, and what is interesting about Israel is this is God's country, and so what is always amazing is why did God even allow it? God says, no, not here. Now, it could be in all the other pagan worlds, but not here. So again, I cannot answer that. What the sin here is, it's not in owning slaves, but Hebrew slaves. In other words, at this time, in a sense, as we have been seeing God listing the evils and the sin of Israel, one of the sins is you have enslaved your Hebrew brother. Now, the law of Moses said you can own any non-Israelites. You can own them. You can own them as property. There were no rights. There was nothing. You can own them. Okay, um, you weren't to be cruel to them, just like you want to be cruel to the animals. In the words, if a person was just cruel to an animal, I would say, okay, you need to be punished for that. But again, so this is a big question as to why God allowed this to happen. And again, how can I give you an answer for that? So when he says here that at the midnight hour here, as Israel is being conquered, they're free. Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people who are in Israel to proclaim freedom. Okay, wow, thank you. As we're being conquered. Okay, thank you. But notice this: the sin was the Hebrews' slaves, that they weren't supposed to enslave excuse me, their Hebrew brethren in the first place. This was evil in the sight of God. So verse 10. All the officials and the people who entered into this covenant to free their male and female slaves in order not to enslave them any longer, obeyed and freed them. Afterwards, however, they changed their mind and took back their male and female slaves they had freed and forced them to become slaves again. Now keep this in mind, as they were being conquered. And remember, Israel tried to do that. They freed the slaves, and then what happened? Pharaoh hardened his heart, and he said, well, let's go back and get our slaves. What were we thinking? Who's going to do our laundry? Who's going to work our fields, right? Verse 12. Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. I'm sorry, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah from the Lord. This is what the Lord said, the God of Israel. I made a covenant with your ancestors when I brought them out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery, saying, at the end of 7 years, each of you must free his Hebrew brothers who sold himself to you. He may serve you 6 years, but you must send him out free from you. But your ancestors did not obey me or pay any attention. Today, you repented and did what pleased me, each of you proclaiming freedom for his neighbor. And you made a covenant before me at the temple called by my name, but you changed your minds and profaned my name. Each has taken back his male and female slaves who had been freed to go wherever they wanted, and you have again subjugated them to uh, to be your slaves. Now, so again, remember, this is not the barbaric slavery that we know of that he's complaining about. This is the slavery that he's referring to for us. The Hebrew slave was what more you would call an indentured servant. If you was in debt, you can pay your debt. Well, then you paid it off by working it off as an indentured servant. And then if you was a slave, then you had the Mosaic law said that you had to they had to free him. You had to free him at the end of 7 years, and then of course every 49th year was the year of Jubilee. They wasn't doing that. Verse 17. Therefore, this is what the Lord says: you have not obeyed me by proclaiming freedom, each man for his brother or for his neighbor. I hereby proclaim freedom for you. This is the Lord's declaration. To the sword, to plague, and to famine, I will make you a har in all of the earth's kingdoms. I will make you a har to all of the earth's kingdoms. He says, as for those who disobeyed my covenant, not keeping the terms of the covenant they made before me, I will treat them like the calf they cut into two in order to pass between its pieces. The officials of Judah and Jerusalem, the court officials and the priests and all of the people of the land who passed between the pieces of the calf will be handed over to their enemies, to those who want to take their lives. Their corpse will become food for the birds of the sky and for the wild animals of the land. I will hand Zedekiah the king of Judah and his officials over to their enemies, and those who want to take their lives to the king of Babylon's army that is withdrawn. I'm about to give the command. This is the declaration. I will bring them back to the city. They will fight against it, capture it, burn it down. Burn it down. And I will make Judah's cities desolate without inhabitation. Now, there are other things he is going to bring about. He's going to, their sins, okay? This is one of them. Enslaving. Now, this only applies, as I said before, as African Americans, or as an African American, yes, I'm bothered by the idea of the allowance of slavery. For example, if I was around Israel at that time, it would have been perfectly fine to have me as a slave. Okay? Now, again, I cannot give you an answer why God allowed that in the nation. Now, there's a lot of things that we could say that God allows as the result of Adam's sin. We could say, okay, well, God wasn't changing. And I think in the last study, when we talking about how Israel kept asking Jesus, will he restore the kingdom to Israel at this time? They were hounding Jesus doing this earthly ministry about the kingdom. They had very, very high hopes about the kingdom. They did. They were expecting, hoping that Jesus would restore the kingdom. And then also their positions in the kingdom. Okay? So they were disappointed when Jesus died because, wait a minute, well, they were like, wait a minute, whoa, what's this death stuff right here? They were very much assured that he was the Messiah. He proved he was the Messiah. Their timing was off. Okay. The point is that Jesus never changed society. And even now, through the gospel, the purpose of the gospel, Jesus is not changing society. The social gospel distorts then the mission of the church, the mission of the gospel. They see things through a social gospel perspective. God doesn't. That's not what God is doing. Now, sometimes things naturally or organically plays out, like slavery played itself out, I believe, by the hand of God, because the founding fathers were foolish enough to write, and I say this very, very sarcastically, they were foolish enough to put in certain clauses that made it inevitable that you had to free the slaves, because they didn't think that the slaves were human. That's why they could that's why they could enslave them. So when they wrote, we count all men as equal. We believe that all men are equal, created equal by the Creator. They were not talking about their slaves, which at the time of writing it, Jefferson had slaves, right? Then all of the other laws about being created equal, having freedoms, all that. They did not think about black people as having that. However, you said it, so now you got to say black people are not human. They tried it, but couldn't. So inevitably, slavery was going to come because they put that. Now, but that's not the mission of the church. And the point is that the mission of the church is to preach the gospel. So God, right now, there's coming a time, and we said this in the last video, that there's a time coming when Jesus will restore righteousness and justice. There will be justice in the land. There will not be, you're not going to, what we see in terms of the world today, Jesus is going to take that, but not now. Not now. In fact, not even, remember, Israel itself is not going to be, it's not restored right now. So, like I say, so as far as the slavery issue is concerned, God wasn't changing the world, I do have questions why he still allowed it among his people. Okay. I even understand slavery from a New Testament perspective, because the purpose of the New Testament, again, globally, we're witnesses. Okay. We are witnesses. All right. So again, I can't answer the question as to why God allowed slavery. And he did allow slavery to the non-Jewish people. They could own the non-Jewish persons as property. What his complaint here was how you were treating the fellow Israelites. Okay. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. And I will see you in the next video.